Hey there, welcome to the deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're tackling a topic that's, well, it's way more exciting than it might sound at first.
Okay.
Project management. And don't worry, we're not talking about dry textbooks or
Yeah.
stuffy corporate jargon. We're going to unlock the secrets that can help you be more effective, whether you're leading a team, planning a vacation, or just trying to get a handle on your to-do list.
What's fascinating about project management is that it really is a mindset, a
Yeah.
way of thinking that can transform how you approach any challenge.
Our guide for this deep dive is the book Head First PMP, 4th edition. It's a study guide for a professional certification, but don't let that scare you. It's known for making even complex project management concepts approachable and fun, which is exactly what we're all about here on the deep dive.
This source is a fantastic choice because it uses real-life examples and even humor to illustrate the key principles. We'll distill those insights so you can grasp the essence of what really matters.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly us a project? It seems like we use that word for everything these days.
That's true. But in project management, a project has a very specific definition. It's a temporary endeavor, meaning it has a defined beginning and end, and it's undertaken to create something unique, a product, service, or result that hasn't been done in this exact way before.
So it's not just your daily routine
Yeah.
or ongoing work, right?
Right. It's about creating something new.
Yeah.
Or achieving a specific goal. The book uses the example of a group of teachers planning a vacation.
Yep.
That's a project. Because it's time-bound, they have a set time frame, and it results in a specific outcome, the trip itself.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can already see how this applies to so many things beyond just formal work projects. Planning a wedding,
Right.
launching a side hustle, even organizing a family reunion. These could all be considered projects using this definition.
Absolutely. And once you start thinking in terms of projects, you can apply the principles of project management to be more organized, efficient, and ultimately successful.
So let's say you've identified something as a project. What's the next step?
The book dives into the project lifecycle. Basically, the different phases a project goes through from start to finish. It's broken down into 5 key stages: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward. But why is understanding this cycle so important?
Because each phase has its own unique set of activities and challenges. Knowing where you are in the cycle helps you make better decisions and avoid common pitfalls. For example, during the planning phase, you need to carefully define the scope of the project, which means what's included and what's not included. This prevents problems later on when you're in the execution phase, and suddenly things start expanding beyond what you originally envisioned.
So it's like making sure everyone is on the same page from the beginning and you're not constantly adding things on as you go, right?
Exactly.
I've definitely experienced that before. And it always leads to chaos.
It's much easier to make adjustments in the early stages than when you're already deep into the project. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't start constructing the walls before you have a solid blueprint.
Of course not. That's a great analogy. Now, the book also mentions portfolios and programs. How do those fit into the picture?
Think of a portfolio like a collection of different projects and programs that are aligned with a company's overall strategy.
Okay.
Let's say you work for a streaming service like Netflix. They might have a portfolio focused on original content, another on international expansion, and so on.
So it's like a way to categorize and manage
Yeah.
all the different initiatives a company's working on.
Exactly. And within a portfolio, you might have programs, which are groups of related projects that are managed together. For example, that original content portfolio might have separate programs for movies, TV shows, and documentaries.
Okay, I'm starting to see the hierarchy here.
Yeah.
So why is this distinction between portfolios, programs, and projects important?
Understanding these layers helps you see how your work fits into the bigger picture. It also emphasizes the importance of aligning projects with strategic goals. There's no point in executing a project flawlessly if it's not contributing to the overall objectives of the company.
Right, it's about making sure your efforts are actually moving the needle,
Yeah.
not just keeping you busy.
Mm.
Now, before we move on to the next section, the book also mentions some important documents, like charters, business cases, and agreements. Why are these so crucial, especially at the beginning of a project?
Think of these documents as the foundation for project success.
Yep.
A business case, for example, justifies why the project is worth doing in the first place. It outlines the potential benefits, the costs, and the risks.
So it's like making the case for why this project deserves time and resources.
Exactly. The charter formally authorizes the project and outlines the project manager's authority. It's like giving the project manager the official green light to proceed, and agreements, often in the form of contracts, define the terms of engagement with external parties or stakeholders.
So it's all about setting clear expectations, getting everyone on the same page, and making sure the project has a solid rationale before you even start.
Precisely. These upfront efforts can save you from a lot of headaches and disputes down the road.
I can definitely see that. Now, speaking of the people involved, the book emphasizes that the success of a project hinges not just on tools and processes, but also on the human element.
That's a crucial point. It's about leadership, communication, and understanding the dynamics of how people work together.
So, what are some of the essential characteristics of a successful project manager? I'm guessing it's more than just being organized and good with deadlines.
The book highlights 3 key characteristics, and they're interconnected in a fascinating way. The first is performance,
Right.
which seems obvious, right? A project manager needs to consistently deliver high-quality work and meet objectives. But here's where it gets interesting. Performance is directly influenced by the second characteristic, personal skills.
So it's not just about technical expertise,
Yeah.
but also about how you interact with people.
Exactly. This includes communication, leadership, motivation, conflict resolution, those soft skills that are often overlooked but are absolutely essential for effective teamwork.
I've definitely worked on projects where the lack of good communication or conflict resolution completely derailed the progress.
Oh.
So I get that. What's the third characteristic?
The third one is a bit more strategic, a focus on the big picture.
Okay.
It's about understanding how the project fits into the overall goals and strategy of the organization.
Right. So it's not enough to just execute tasks in a vacuum. You need to understand the why behind the project and how it contributes to the bigger picture.
Exactly. A project manager who possesses all 3 of these characteristics, performance, personal skills, and a focus on the big picture, is well equipped to lead a team to success.
Okay, so we've talked about defining projects,
Yeah.
understand the life cycle, and the qualities of a good project manager. But projects don't exist in isolation, do they? They operate within the context of an organization. What does the book have to say about that?
That's a great point. The book dives into the fascinating world of organizational structures and how they impact project dynamics. It talks about different structures, from functional to matrix to projectized, and how each one influences the role of the project manager.
Okay, so can you break down these different structures for me? I'm not super familiar with all the organizational jargon.
Of course, in a functional organization, people are grouped by their specialties, like marketing, finance, or engineering. The project manager might have limited authority, and team members report primarily to their functional manager.
This is like a very traditional hierarchical structure.
Exactly. Then you have the matrix organization, which is a bit more complex. Here, team members report to both a functional manager and a project manager. This can create a bit of a tug of war for resources and priorities.
So there's potential for conflict there.
There can be, but it also allows for more flexibility and collaboration across different departments. Finally, you have the projectized organization, where the project manager has the most authority. Team members are dedicated to the project and report directly to the project manager.
So in a projectized organization, the project manager has more control and can make decisions more efficiently.
Exactly. But the ideal structure really depends on the nature of the projects and the organization's overall culture and goals.
That makes sense. Now, the book also talks about something called a PMO, or Project Management Office. What exactly is that?
Think of the PMO as a central hub for all things project management within an organization.
Okay.
They set standards, provide best practices, offer training, and support project managers.
So they're like the project management gurus of the company.
Exactly. But their level of influence can vary. Some PMOs are purely supportive, offering guidance and resources, but leaving the decision-making to the individual project managers.
Okay. That sounds pretty hands-off. What are the other types?
You have controlling PMOs, which enforce stricter adherence to processes and standards. They might review project plans, track progress, and even have the power to approve or reject certain decisions.
So they're more involved in the day-to-day operations of the projects.
Yes. And then you have directive PMOs, which take an even more active role. They might directly manage projects, assign project managers, and have a lot of control over resource allocation.
Wow, so the PMO can have a huge impact on how projects are run within a company.
Absolutely. Understanding the PMO's role and level of influence is crucial for navigating the organizational landscape of project management.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
The project lifecycle,
Mm-hmm.
the different organizational structures, and the role of the PMO. But there's one thing I'm still curious about. How much authority does a project manager actually have? Especially in those matrix organizations where teams don't directly report to them.
That's a great question, and it's something the book explores in detail. It boils down to the concept of authority, the legitimate right to make decisions and direct the work of others.
So it's about who has the power to call the shots.
Exactly. And as you might imagine, this can be a bit tricky in matrix organizations where authority is shared between functional managers and project managers.
Right. I can see how that could lead to some confusion and even conflict.
The book highlights that effective project managers in matrix structures often rely on influence rather than formal authority. It's about building relationships, communicating effectively, and persuading others to cooperate and contribute to the project's success.
So it's more about collaboration and negotiation
Yeah.
than just barking orders.
Exactly. Strong interpersonal skills are crucial for navigating those complexities. Now, there's another crucial aspect we need to discuss: constraints.
Okay. Constraints. What exactly are we talking about here?
Every project faces constraints, and understanding them is critical for success. These constraints can be related to time, budget, resources, scope. Basically, anything that limits your ability to deliver the project as envisioned.
Right, I've definitely had projects that went off the rails because of scope creep, where the requirements kept expanding and expanding, but the budget and timeline stayed the same.
The book emphasizes that these constraints are often interconnected. If you change one, it will likely impact the others. For example, if you increase the scope of the project, you might need to adjust the budget or the timeline accordingly.
So it's about finding a balance and making sure everyone understands the trade-offs involved.
Precisely. And that's where stakeholder buy-in becomes so important.
Stakeholders.
Yeah.
Those are all the people who have a vested interest in the project, right?
Exactly. And it's crucial to involve them in discussions about constraints and changes. If they understand the rationale behind decisions and agree on the priorities, you're much less likely to encounter resistance or conflict down the road.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. So I've covered the project lifecycle, organizational structures, the role of the PMO, the importance of authority and influence, and the concept of constraints. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Now that we've laid the groundwork, we're ready to dive into the heart of project management, the process framework.
Okay, I'm ready. But honestly, frameworks can feel a bit intimidating sometimes.
Don't worry, the Head First PMP book does an incredible job of breaking it down into manageable chunks and using relatable examples to illustrate the concepts.
Okay, that's reassuring. So what's the basic structure of this framework?
At its core are those 5 process groups we talked about earlier: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing.
Right, we touched on that before.
Right.
But there's more to it than just those 5 phases, right?
Within these process groups, we have 10 knowledge areas.
Okay.
Think of these as the different categories of expertise that are essential for effective project management.
10 knowledge areas. That sounds like a lot to keep track of.
It might seem overwhelming at first, but they're actually quite logical and interconnected. These areas cover everything from scope and schedule management to cost, quality, risk, and even communication management.
Communications is the whole knowledge area. That really highlights how important it is in project management.
Absolutely. Clear and timely communication is essential for keeping everyone on the same page, managing expectations, and resolving conflicts. Now, to bring these knowledge areas to life, the book uses some fantastic examples that are both relatable and memorable.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into these knowledge areas and see how they all connect. What's first on the list?
Let's start with scope management. Remember those Cows Gone Wild game development scenarios from the book?
Oh, yeah. Those were great.
They're hilarious, but also incredibly insightful. They perfectly illustrate the chaos that can ensue when the scope of a project isn't clearly defined or managed effectively.
Exactly. They show how seemingly small changes can have a ripple effect, leading to delays, budget overruns, and even project failure. Okay, so defining the scope up front, making sure everyone is on the same page is crucial. What about schedule management? I'm guessing that's all about meeting deadlines.
It's more than just deadlines. It's about understanding the sequence of tasks, identifying dependencies, and creating a realistic timeline that takes into account potential delays and risks.
Right, because some tasks need to be completed before others can begin. How does the book illustrate this?
It uses Kathleen's wedding planning saga as an example. She's trying to plan her dream wedding, but she's running into all sorts of scheduling challenges. The book uses her story to introduce the concept of the critical path.
The critical path, what's that?
The critical path is the longest sequence of tasks that determines the overall duration of the project. It's like a chain of dominoes. If one task is delayed, it can push back the entire project.
Ah,
Yeah.
so it's about identifying those crucial tasks
Yeah,
that can make or break the project schedule.
precisely. Understanding the critical path helps you prioritize tasks,
Yeah.
allocate resources effectively, and manage potential delays.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered scope and schedule management. What's next?
Let's talk about cost management.
Right.
This one's all about making sure you stay within budget and deliver value for the money spent.
Right, because no project has an unlimited budget. How does the book tackle this concept?
It uses Alice's kitchen renovation adventure as an example. She's trying to create her dream kitchen, but she's working within a tight budget. Her story illustrates the importance of careful planning, tracking expenses, and making adjustments along the way.
So it's not just about setting a budget at the beginning, but also about monitoring costs throughout the project and making sure you're on track.
Exactly. The book introduces some useful techniques like earned value management, which helps you measure the value delivered for the money spent.
Earned value management. That sounds a bit technical.
It is, but the book explains it in a way that's easy to grasp. It's basically about comparing the actual progress of the project against the planned progress and the budget. It helps you identify potential problems early on and take corrective action.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these different knowledge areas are all interconnected. So we've got scope, schedule, and cost management. What's next?
Let's talk about quality management.
Okay.
This one's about making sure the project deliverables meet the required standards and expectations.
Right, because it's not just about getting things done. It's about getting them done right.
Exactly. And quality management is about much more than just testing at the end of the project. It's about building quality in from the start and ensuring that everyone involved understands the quality requirements.
So it's a proactive approach
Yeah.
rather than a reactive one.
Precisely. The book emphasizes that quality is everyone's responsibility, not just the quality assurance teams.
Okay, so we've covered scope, schedule, cost, and quality management. What's next on our list of knowledge areas?
Let's talk about communication management.
Right, we touched on that earlier. It's about making sure everyone is on the same page and there are no surprises.
Exactly. The book uses a hilarious example of a party planning disaster to illustrate what can happen when communication breaks down.
Okay, I'm guessing that's a story I need to hear.
Let's save that for the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how miscommunication can lead to chaos and how effective communication strategies can prevent those problems.
Ooh, I can't wait. This is already more exciting than I expected. So
Wow.
we've got scope, schedule, cost, quality, and communication management. What's left?
Last but certainly not least, we have risk management.
Risk management. I have a feeling this one's going to be pretty important.
It's crucial. Every project, no matter how well planned, faces inherent risks and uncertainties. Risk management is about identifying those risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and developing strategies to mitigate or avoid them.
So it's about being prepared for the unexpected, having a backup plan for your backup plan.
Exactly. It's not about eliminating all risks, but about managing them effectively so they don't derail your project.
Okay, I'm already seeing how this applies to so many aspects of life, not just formal projects.
That's the beauty of it. These project management principles are surprisingly versatile and can be applied to a wide range of endeavors.
My brain is buzzing with all these insights. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and talk about how these concepts relate to you, even if you're not formally managing projects at work.
That's a great point, and one we'll explore in detail in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're right in the middle of uncovering the secrets of project management, using the Head First PMP book as our guide. In the first part, we laid the groundwork, defining what a project actually is, exploring different organizational structures,
Right.
and even getting into those essential characteristics of a successful project manager.
And we started to delve into those 10 knowledge areas that really form the core of project management wisdom. Things like scope, schedule, cost, and risk management.
You know, I have to admit, when we started talking about all those knowledge areas, my brain started to feel a little overloaded. But then I remembered a key point you made earlier. Project management is a mindset,
Yeah.
a way of thinking that can be applied to almost anything.
That's exactly right. And that's where the real power of this deep dive lies.
Yeah.
Taking these concepts and figuring out how they can help us be more effective in our everyday lives.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How can someone who's not a certified project manager, someone like me, actually use these principles to tackle personal goals or even just manage daily life better?
Think about it this way. Almost any endeavor, whether it's planning a big event, launching a side hustle, or even just decluttering your home, involves setting goals, breaking down tasks, managing resources like time and energy, and dealing with unexpected challenges. That's essentially what project management is all about.
Okay, I see what you mean. So even something as simple as planning a weekend getaway could benefit from a project management approach.
Absolutely. Instead of just winging it and hoping for the best, you could define the scope of your trip. What do you want to see and do? Then you could create a rough schedule, estimate costs, identify potential risks like bad weather or traffic delays, and even think about how you'll communicate with your travel buddies.
Wow, when you put it that way. Makes a lot of sense. I usually just throw some clothes in a bag and hit the road. But then I end up feeling stressed and overspending. Because I didn't plan effectively.
That's a perfect example of how project management thinking can help. And remember those Head First PMP examples we talked about earlier? Kathleen's wedding planning disaster.
Oh, yeah. Those were hard to forget.
Those examples illustrate the consequences of poor planning and execution in a way that's both entertaining and insightful. By applying even basic project management principles, you can avoid those pitfalls in your own endeavors.
Okay, so let's say I'm convinced that project management thinking can be helpful in my personal life. Where do I even begin?
The book suggests starting with the knowledge areas that resonate most with your current challenges. For example, if you're constantly struggling to meet deadlines or feel overwhelmed by your to-do list, focus on the principles of schedule management.
So, instead of just having a long list of tasks, I could try using a more visual approach like a timeline or a Gantt chart.
Exactly. Visualizing your goals and deadlines can be incredibly helpful for staying on track and prioritizing tasks. And the book provides some really practical techniques for doing this, even if you're not using fancy software.
Okay, that sounds helpful. What if my main issue is feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and decisions I need to make? I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with emails, messages, and demands on my attention.
In that case, the knowledge areas of scope management and communication management might be your starting points.
Okay, so how would those apply to this situation?
Scope management is all about clearly defining the boundaries of your projects and tasks. What's included, what's not included, and what are the specific goals you're trying to achieve. This can help you reduce decision fatigue by narrowing your focus and avoiding unnecessary work.
Right, because if you try to do everything at once, you end up accomplishing nothing.
Exactly. And communication management is about establishing clear channels of communication and setting expectations for how and when information will be shared. This can help you reduce information overload and avoid misunderstandings.
So it's about being more intentional with your communication and making sure the right information gets to the right people at the right time.
Precisely. And this applies not just to work projects, but also to personal relationships and family dynamics.
Okay, I can definitely see that. Now, what about those situations where things inevitably go wrong? I mean, life throws curveballs, right?
That's where risk management comes into play. And it's not just about planning for worst-case scenarios, but also about recognizing opportunities and being prepared to adapt.
Okay, so give me an example. How would risk management apply to something like planning a big event? Let's say a family reunion.
Well, first you'd identify potential risks. What could go wrong? Maybe the weather turns bad, or someone gets sick, or there's a conflict within the family. Then you'd assess the likelihood and impact of each risk. How likely is it to happen? And if it does happen, how bad would the consequences be?
Okay, so you're basically doing a risk assessment.
Exactly. And once you've identified and assessed the risks, you can develop strategies to mitigate or avoid them. For example, if you're worried about bad weather, you might have a backup plan for an indoor venue. Or if you're concerned about family conflicts, you might facilitate some open communication beforehand to address any underlying issues.
So it's about thinking ahead and having a plan B or even a plan C ready to go.
Precisely. The book emphasizes that proactive risk management can significantly reduce stress and increase your chances of success.
Okay. I'm starting to feel like I can actually handle anything life throws at me now.
That's the spirit.
But, throughout this deep dive, we've been talking about the book as a study guide for the PMP certification. Is that something I should consider pursuing, even if I'm not currently working in a formal project management role?
That's a great question, and the answer really depends on your individual goals and career aspirations. The PMP certification is undoubtedly valuable. It demonstrates a comprehensive understanding of project management principles and best practices, which can be a significant asset in various fields.
So it's not just for people with project manager in their job title.
Not at all. The book highlights that PMP certification can benefit professionals in diverse roles, from IT and engineering to marketing, healthcare, and even the arts.
Interesting. So it's like a way to level up your professional toolkit and demonstrate your ability to manage complex endeavors.
Precisely. And while the Head First PMP book is specifically designed for exam preparation, the knowledge it imparts is highly transferable to real-world scenarios. It's like investing in a skill set that will benefit you regardless of your chosen path.
Okay, I'm definitely adding this to my list of things to explore further. This deep dive has truly opened my eyes to the power of project management thinking.
I'm glad to hear that. But our journey isn't over yet. We've still got one more part of this deep dive to go.
Ooh. Can you give us a sneak peek of what's coming up?
Of course. We'll be exploring the crucial question of how to determine if an idea is even worth pursuing as a project in the first place. It's all about aligning your efforts with your goals and ensuring you're investing your time and energy wisely.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to dive back in. See you in part 3. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the world of project management with the Head First PMP book as our trusty guide.
We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding the project life cycle and those 10 essential knowledge areas to seeing how these principles can apply, not just to work projects, but also to personal goals and everyday life.
And you know what really struck me? It's not just about mastering the tools and techniques.
Right.
It's about cultivating a project thinker mindset. That ability to approach challenges strategically, break them down into manageable steps, and navigate the inevitable twists and turns along the way.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And in this final part of our deep dive, we're going to tackle a question that's often overlooked, but is absolutely crucial for making the most of your time and energy.
You teased this at the end of the last part. How do you know if an idea is even worth pursuing as a project in the first place?
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new idea. But before you dive headfirst into planning and execution, it's essential to take a step back and ask yourself, is this project truly aligned with my goals and priorities? Is it the best use of my limited resources?
So it's not just about whether you can do something, but whether you should do it.
Exactly. The Head First PMP book subtly guides us toward a framework for making these decisions. It emphasizes the importance of aligning projects with strategic goals, whether those goals are personal or professional.
Okay, so walk me through this framework. What are the key factors to consider when deciding if an idea is project-worthy?
Let's break it down into a few key questions. First, consider the strategic alignment. Does this project support your broader goals? Will it move you closer to where you want to be?
It's like making sure you're rowing in the right direction, not just rowing hard for the sake of it.
Exactly. Next, assess the feasibility. Do you have the necessary resources? Time, budget, skills, support, like Diasteki, to realistically complete this project?
Right. No point in taking on a massive home renovation if you're already stretched thin on time and budget, or if you lack the necessary construction skills.
Precisely. Then there's the potential value or return on investment. What are the benefits of completing this project? Will it generate revenue, improve efficiency, enhance your skills, or simply bring you joy and fulfillment?
So weighing the effort against the potential payoff.
Exactly. And don't forget the risks involved. Every project comes with inherent uncertainties. Can you anticipate and manage those risks effectively? Are the potential downsides acceptable?
This is really making me rethink how I approach new ideas and commitments.
That's the power of this kind of thinking. It's not about saying no to everything, but rather about making informed choices that align with your goals and priorities.
Okay, so let's say I've gone through this assessment process.
Oh, okay.
And decided that, yes, this idea is worth pursuing as a project. What's the next step?
That's when you move into the formal project initiation phase. As outlined in the Head First PMP framework, develop a project charter. Define the scope. Create a plan. And assemble your team. But having gone through that initial assessment, You'll be starting with a much stronger foundation for success.
I love that. Starting strong, with intention and clarity. It's like setting yourself up for success from the very beginning.
Exactly. Now, one final thought to leave you with. Even the most meticulously planned projects can encounter unexpected obstacles or changes in circumstances.
That's life, right?
Exactly. So cultivate the flexibility to adapt, reevaluate, and even pivot if needed. Sometimes the most valuable outcome of a project is not the initial goal, but the lessons learned and the growth experienced along the way.
Wow, that's profound. I'm walking away from this deep dive with a whole new perspective on project management, not just as a set of tools and techniques, but as a mindset, a way of thinking that empowers me to take on challenges and achieve my goals, both big and small.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Remember, the Head First PMP is just one resource among many. There's a wealth of knowledge out there on project management. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
And to our amazing listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you have sources you'd like us to explore in future episodes, be sure to send them our way. We're always eager to dive into new knowledge territories with you. Until next time, keep those brains engaged.